Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Clemens, and this is Vocabulary List 21, and this is talking about some of the stuff from the 1950s, some of the stuff from the 1960s, mostly dealing with presidential initiatives, and a little bit getting started on the civil rights era. Alright, and yes, I am only 21. Alright, so let's talk about first foreign policy terms. First we have the Domino Theory, and that's the belief that if one nation fell to communism, that the other ones would too. And so you see this little drawing, it's dominoes, okay? I can't think of a fun representation. Okay, and yeah, we saw China, Korea, Vietnam, and then the worry is, will that happen to Laos and Cambodia and Thailand and Malaysia and so on and so forth. And thus, that's why we did get involved in the Korean conflict and the Vietnam War. All right, Cuban Missile Crisis. We talked about brinkmanship, where it's basically that game of chicken where, two sides are going towards each other and going towards each other and going towards each other. In this case, though, they're going towards each other with nuclear weapons. Who's going to pull back first? So it's a situation with the U.S. president was Kennedy, the Russian or Soviet premier was Khrushchev, and then we have Fidel Castro. And then who on earth was Fidel, or is Fidel Castro? He was the communist leader of Cuba following the Cuban Revolution. And look at him all young and snazzy there. All right, so let's talk some presidents. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, he's a big guy in American history in that he's the architect of the European theater in World War II. He's the guy that comes up with D-Day and all that stuff. He's president during the 1950s. He loved a good game of golf. He's dealing with the Cold War. He's dealing with Brown versus Board of Education. And yeah, he's also the guy that gets us started on the interstate highway system. There he is. Oh, Ike. All right. This is not necessarily a program of his, but it is something that happened during his presidency, big time. And it had happened before, but the real crazy time of it is during his presidency. Suburbanization, that's where you get commuter communities, where basically people are moving outside the city, commuting into the city for jobs. And so one of the biggest ones was in Long Island, Levittown, and oh my god, look it up, it's crazy. Just all the houses had to look the same. It was really weird. John F. Kennedy, so he's the president during the Bay of Pigs crisis. He's there during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's the guy that starts the Peace Corps, and that's how you say it, Corps. It's not corpse. That's just weird. And yes, he wanted to go to the moon. Not that he wanted to go to the moon, but he said one day we will put a man on the moon. All right, that was a horrible Kennedy. I'm stopping while I'm ahead. So there he is, and he's probably asking not what our country can do for us, but what we can do for our country there. Or maybe he's just shaking his fist at us. You never know what he's doing. His program was the New Frontier, and this was his program to decrease poverty, try to improve the economy. He didn't really get a chance to do as much as he wanted to do with it. The Congress was controlled by Republicans. He was a Democrat, and then he got shot a little bit, and that kind of tends to decrease your ability to get things done. I just wanted to show you guys, check this out. This is, the Peace Corps 50 years after the fact, and these are all the different countries where we're still active today with the Peace Corps. It's really a great program. Lyndon Johnson, he's the guy that comes after Kennedy. He's the one that expands the war in Vietnam with the whole Gulf of Tonkin resolution. He declares the war on poverty with the Great Society. And not that you ever need to know this for anyone or anything, that everyone in his family was named LBJ, so that they would have the same initials. So yeah, like even his wife, like I can't remember her actual name, but her nickname was Lady Bird, so it was Lady Bird Johnson. That's right, soak that one in. And there he is with his dog, LBJ. And so he had the Great Society. It's his domestic program to try to fight poverty, created Head Start, Medicare, Medicaid, financial aid for college, government housing. I mean, there's a million things that it created. Obviously, there are positives to that. It's helping out a lot of people who were in poverty. There's also negatives that it cost a lot of money. And so here's just, just a little bit of a chart that shows some of the things that, were created with the Great Society. So costly, but kind of cool. All right, and then our civil rights portion of our vocab. Oh my God, if we've talked about this once, we've talked about it 25 times. Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. It said segregation in schools unconstitutional, that separate is inherently unequal. And it reversed Plessy versus Ferguson. So Plessy versus Ferguson in the 1890s said, segregation's fine, like as long as it's separate and equal. And remember, Brown says, no, it's separate and unequal. And remember, that was Earl Warren that came up with that one. And so here's a headline from that: court banned segregation. The civil rights movement as a whole, our little fancy schmancy definition: movement to end racial segregation and prejudice in the United States. And I think, we kind of get held up that it's all just Martin Luther King, and here's Martin Luther King here, that did everything. But no, there was a whole group of people, and a bunch of them are still around today. Some of them, their children, some of them just totally new people that are still working towards the same goals. So, obviously mad props to MLK, but obviously it's other people. Civil disobedience, this is the belief in using non-violent means to achieve a goal. So, like, here's pictured the sit-ins, and it's actually interesting all the different places they sat in. They sat in at beaches and restaurants and, like, just anywhere publicly where they could sit in where, things were segregated. And they just sat there. They didn't say anything. They didn't, curse anyone out. They just kind of did what they needed to do. And that's how they made their show. Rosa Parks, she's the beginning of this whole, she's like the catalyst to get things started in the 1950s. So she, her actions led to the Montgomery bus boycott. And as a result, as time went on, you end up having the desegregation of buses in Alabama. And here she is, getting sent to the police there. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm not trying to minimize him in any way. Dude is awesome. Civil rights leader who led numerous protests. I mean, I'm just giving you a few here, like the Montgomery bus boycott. He's the one, Rosa Parks, got started, but he's the one that, did all the groundwork for it. March on Selma, gave the I Have a Dream speech, and lobbied to get laws passed, including, we're going to be talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and, the 24th Amendment, all this stuff. So there's Martin Luther King. And then we have Malcolm X, and Malcolm X is a little bit different. I can't, I have here, like, you should read his autobiography. And I actually mean it. You really, really should. It's phenomenal. So he's the leader of the Black Power movement and a member of something called the Nation of Islam, which is still around today. And so they have a different point of view. It's definitely more radical. Definitely, as he got started, his thing was, separation of races. By the time he was assassinated, he had different points of view, and that's why I said you should really read his autobiography. Alrighty guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this, hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you next time.